Have you ever found yourself watching someone systematically burn every single bridge they once proudly marched across, as if they're deliberately tearing down every relationship and opportunity they once held dear? That's exactly the unfolding saga with Meghan Markle right now. And honestly, it's playing out like a high-stakes Hollywood drama, full of tension, betrayal, and shocking reversals. But here's the real kicker. This time, Meghan isn't the one holding the script or calling the shots. The narrative has slipped beyond her control, and the people who once stood by her side are now quietly, or not so quietly, turning away. Let's rewind to a moment that felt like a seismic shift: the recent BET Awards. This was supposed to be one of those glamorous, star-studded nights filled with the usual splashy celebrations, carefully curated speeches, and safe, polished moments that make award shows feel like a mutual admiration society. Instead, it turned into a live public reckoning, a moment where old alliances shattered and private frustrations were laid bare, right in front of the world. Leading this charge was none other than Tyler Perry. Yes, Tyler Perry, the very man who had once been Meghan and Harry's staunchest ally, their provider of sanctuary and support when they decided to step away from royal life. For context, Tyler Perry's generosity towards Meghan and Harry was no secret. When the Sussexes left the royal family's tight grip, Perry opened his doors, offering them a mansion, access to private jets, and even covering their security costs. It was a significant show of loyalty and friendship, something many in Hollywood or the media didn't expect from Perry, who is known for being both generous and fiercely protective of those he backs. But what happened on that stage at the BET Awards was something nobody saw coming. Perry was supposed to deliver a respectful, carefully scripted tribute, something safe, polished, and well-rehearsed, a moment to celebrate, not to confront. But as he read from the teleprompter, something changed. He suddenly veered off script and uttered a line that sent shockwaves through the room. "You can't build a palace on unpaid bills." It was a quiet line, subtle but surgical in its impact. No names were mentioned, no explicit accusations were made, but the implication was crystal clear to everyone present. The tension in the room was palpable, the audience held their breath, and social media erupted as people instantly connected the dots. The message was unmistakable. The person who had relied on Perry's generosity had not reciprocated in any way. This wasn't a petty jab or a casual diss. This was a moment when the carefully constructed fairy tale publicly shattered. Tyler Perry, who had previously been Meghan's most vocal defender, was no longer willing to protect her from criticism or cover for her mistakes. His words marked a hard boundary, a line drawn in the sand. According to insiders, years of gifts, support, and loyalty had been met with silence and ingratitude. Not a single dollar had been repaid. Not a word of thanks had been heard. Perry's generosity had morphed into frustration and resentment. It became painfully clear that he felt used, taken advantage of, and was no longer willing to tolerate it. Oprah Winfrey's deafening silence. Just when you thought the drama had reached its peak, the story took another unexpected turn. Enter Oprah Winfrey, the very same Oprah who orchestrated Meghan's landmark history-making interview back in 2021, a moment that reverberated around the world and seemed to cement Meghan's status as a cultural icon. But today, Oprah has gone completely silent. No calls, no texts, no public statements, no subtle expressions of support. According to sources close to Harpo Productions, Oprah's team hasn't mentioned Meghan in months. The dynamic that once felt unbreakable now feels utterly fractured. Meghan went from being the headline-making, culture-shifting figure who commanded attention and sympathy to what many insiders now describe as Hollywood dead weight, effectively sidelined and ignored practically overnight. Pause and let that sink in for a moment. Meghan Markle was once the centerpiece of a seismic cultural moment, a woman who wielded immense sympathy power. She carried a royal title, commanded enormous media interest, and had a massive entertainment industry ready to back her up, amplify her every move, and champion her story. Now she's become a liability. Major talent agencies that would normally fight tooth and nail for the chance to represent a royal figure, WME, CAA, UTA, are reportedly stepping away, unwilling to take on what's become an enormous risk. Why? Because Meghan is now seen as too controversial, too unpredictable, and burdened with too much baggage. These agencies have even come up with a nickname for her behind closed doors: the moral risk factor. It sounds like a stock market warning label, and in many ways, that's exactly what it is. The risk of associating with her is seen as high, and the potential fallout is deemed too dangerous to justify the investment. What was once a career filled with promise and momentum is now clouded by skepticism and doubt.
We're gonna watch this moment, and then we're gonna learn that this was edited to protect Meghan, and then we're gonna go back through it, but look how Meghan gets shut down, and they even edited out the extremeness of it.
The insiders who once whispered about her potential now speak of caution and avoidance. So here's the big picture. Meghan Markle's story has become less about empowerment or overcoming adversity and more about the consequences of burned bridges and lost goodwill. The carefully crafted narrative she once controlled has slipped away, replaced by whispers of unpaid debts, silent allies, and evaporating opportunities. It's a dramatic fall from grace that's unfolding in real time, playing out on the world's biggest stages, and watched by millions who once cheered her on. The question now is simple. What happens when you lose the trust of those who once stood by you? Because in Hollywood, and in life, that trust is often the only thing that keeps the kingdom standing. Since Meghan Markle stepped away from the royal family, every single project she's been involved with has seemed to stumble, falter, or end in outright failure. It's like watching a string of dominoes falling. Each opportunity crumbles under the weight of unmet expectations, bad timing, or just plain bad luck. Take the massive $100 million deal Netflix gave her and Prince Harry. Yes, a staggering $100 million. That kind of money can launch careers, create groundbreaking content, and change narratives. So what exactly did that investment yield? Unfortunately, the results have been underwhelming at best and disastrous at worst. There was Pearl, an ambitious animated series that was slated to be a major cultural moment, but ended up being scrapped before it even aired. An abrupt cancellation that left fans and critics scratching their heads. Then came Love to Lead, a docu-series meant to inspire and highlight leadership stories, but it barely made any waves or captured public attention. And let's not forget Love, Meghan, a documentary series Rolling Stone mercilessly described as Goop meets Suits, but with none of the charm. Ouch. That kind of scathing critique is rare, especially for someone with Meghan's platform and resources. It points to a fundamental problem. The projects don't resonate, don't connect, and ultimately fail to justify the hype or investment. Tyler Perry and all the red flags. But to truly understand how this situation spiraled, it's important to rewind to why Tyler Perry even stepped in to help Meghan and Harry in the first place. Back in 2020, the couple was in a precarious spot, leaving behind the UK with no official security, no fixed home, and no clear plan for what lay ahead. The world was watching, unsure if they would succeed outside the royal fold or crumble under the pressure. Enter Tyler Perry, the powerhouse producer and mogul who literally flew them out to safety, putting them up in a luxury mansion in Los Angeles. This wasn't just a casual favor. It was a massive vote of trust and belief in their potential. Perry was essentially putting his reputation and resources on the line at a time when very few others were willing to do so. Fast forward to today, and the tone has changed dramatically. Perry isn't quietly supporting anymore. He's publicly pulling back his support in the most visible and unmistakable way possible, right there on the BT stage. That moment was anything but subtle. It was a loud, unmistakable warning shot fired in public. Behind the scenes, sources say Perry's team had been urging him for years to set boundaries, to stop what they described as charity without consent. The unpaid bills and unreciprocated favors had piled up for far too long, and Perry had clearly reached his breaking point. What started as friendship and goodwill turned into frustration, and now, outright disillusionment. Perry's pointed remark wasn't just about money. It was a stinging indictment of Meghan's entire empire. It wasn't built on gratitude, respect, or meaningful support. Instead, it was propped up by slick PR campaigns, borrowed prestige, and mounting debt. And here's the kicker. Even the people who once considered Meghan untouchable, like Oprah Winfrey, are now pulling the plug. Oprah, who famously gave Meghan that game-changing interview in 2021, has gone radio silent. There are no more calls, no texts, no public endorsements. In Hollywood, loyalty is the ultimate currency, and Meghan's credit has officially run dry. Tyler Perry wasn't alone in sending these signals that night. It felt like the entire Hollywood community was starting to speak with one voice, and that voice was screaming, "Enough!" For someone who once commanded global attention and seemed invincible, Meghan Markle's spectacular fall from grace has been astonishing to watch. The invitations that once poured in from exclusive events and star-studded parties completely dried up. Press interest, once intense and non-stop, has dwindled to a barely audible whisper. Case in point, Meghan didn't even make the cut for this year's Vanity Fair Oscar party, a glaring omission insiders say was no accident. Event organizers are reportedly fed up with her camp's relentless demands, last-minute power moves, requests for special VIP treatment, demands to black out press coverage, and guarantees of primetime spotlight. She appeared to be chasing royal-level perks without accepting the corresponding responsibilities that usually come with them. And it's not just the glitzy red carpet where Meghan's influence is slipping away. Calls and emails from her team to the biggest studios and streaming platforms being ignored. No green lights, no meetings, no deals. Just deafening silence. Word on the street is she's quietly been wiped off the potential collaboration lists of several major media houses. At this point, it's almost like Meghan has become a ghost in Hollywood, the very city that thrives on buzz, scandal, and star power, but can't handle chaos on this scale, especially when there's no clear benefit or payoff. But the public fallout is just the tip of the iceberg. Behind closed doors, Meghan's so-called empire is quietly but steadily crumbling. Financial watchdogs have turned their attention to the Archewell Foundation, the nonprofit arm she and Harry established. Multiple U.S. regulatory bodies have reportedly flagged suspicious activity connected to the foundation's finances. Banks and financial institutions are raising red flags over inflated consulting fees, delayed reimbursements, and strange spending patterns that don't align with the foundation's stated mission. One banking executive even confided to Forbes that Meghan is brand rich but cash poor. In other words, on paper, her brand looks wealthy and influential, but in reality, she's living off anticipated successes and deals that never quite materialize. In sum, Meghan's story isn't just about faltering projects or fading fame. It's about how rapidly the wheels can come off when trust evaporates and the industry's goodwill runs out. It's a cautionary tale about the high cost of burning bridges and the fragility of celebrity when it's not backed up by sustainable success, genuine connections, or consistent follow-through. The 2024 tax filings for Archewell Foundation didn't do Meghan Markle any favors. In fact, they added fuel to the growing fire of controversy surrounding her ventures. The foundation reported nearly $3 million in revenue for the year, which on the surface sounds impressive. But when the numbers were broken down, the details told a very different story. Shockingly, the filings showed $0 spent on administrative expenses, which is almost unheard of for an organization of that size and scope. Worse yet, there was almost no meaningful content, output, or measurable impact generated by Archewell throughout the entire year. Legal analysts and nonprofit experts didn't hold back. They openly questioned whether many of the foundation's expenses could even be legitimately classified as charitable spending. The financial records hinted at expenditures that looked suspiciously personal rather than philanthropic. pricey personal stylists, extravagant travel itineraries, and media consultants whose roles seemed vaguely defined, if defined at all. To outside observers, the whole thing reeked of red flags and screamed, "Audit me!" It suggested a troubling pattern of spending that blurred the lines between charity and personal indulgence, putting the nonprofit's legitimacy under serious scrutiny. Meanwhile, the fallout from Meghan's massive Spotify deal has been nothing short of catastrophic. The $20 million podcast contract was supposed to be the cornerstone of her media comeback, a flagship project that would herald her as a serious player in the entertainment world. Instead, it imploded after just 12 episodes, barely enough time to gain traction. But Spotify didn't just quietly end the partnership behind closed doors. No, they went public in a way that effectively burned every bridge with Meghan and Harry. One Spotify executive openly referred to the couple with thinly veiled frustration, calling them P, a nickname born from exasperation. Meanwhile, staff inside the company reportedly grew fed up with what they described as unmet promises and constant blame shifting. Meghan had guaranteed groundbreaking content and steady engagement, but the reality was a series of underwhelming episodes that failed to deliver the promised impact. When the show flopped, the blame game began, and Meghan's camp reportedly pointed fingers at everyone except themselves. Undeterred, Meghan tried to stage a comeback with a new podcast teaser, but the attempt spectacularly failed to generate any meaningful buzz. Online, the teaser barely registered. Early focus groups were blunt, calling it self-important, confusing, and lacking a clear direction or appeal. Simply put, the spark was gone. There was no excitement, no momentum, and no palpable interest. This wasn't just a minor stumble. It was a sign that her brand, once heavily hyped and eagerly awaited, now felt like a risky bet that nobody wanted to admit to backing. And of course, it's impossible to talk about Meghan's rise and fall without mentioning Oprah Winfrey, the powerhouse who once championed her cause. The 2021 Oprah interview pulled in a staggering 17 million viewers worldwide and dominated cultural conversations for weeks, marking a high point in Meghan's media influence. But according to sources close to Harpo Productions, doubts began creeping in not long after that landmark interview. Palace insiders and advisors quietly flagged concerns, warning Oprah's team that Meghan's story might not be as airtight as it appeared. Those warnings were largely ignored at the time, perhaps overshadowed by the desire to support Meghan's narrative. But now, the cracks have widened. Oprah is pulling away, distancing herself and her production team from the Sussexes faster than anyone anticipated. Even Meghan's closest industry ally, Gayle King, has gone notably quiet. There are no recent mentions, no glowing shoutouts, just a carefully maintained silence. And that silence? It's not accidental or personal. It's strategic. In Hollywood, reputation is everything. And when the heat intensifies, even the most loyal friends know when to step back. The business is brutal and unforgiving, and Meghan has now become a liability that many want to avoid. What was once a dazzling spotlight shining on Meghan Markle now feels more like the slow, inevitable dimming of a star in decline. The glow is fading, the crowds are thinning, and the harsh reality of Hollywood's unforgiving nature is settling in. For Meghan, the journey that began with so much promise and privilege is turning into a cautionary tale of lost goodwill, shrinking opportunities, and the cold, hard truths behind fame and fortune. Archewell isn't just grappling with a wave of bad press. It's facing what could rapidly spiral into a full-scale legal catastrophe. Experts in the nonprofit sector are already circling the foundation with alarm, tossing around some very serious accusations, including self-dealing, a grave violation that can dismantle charitable organizations from the inside out. The situation gets even more tangled and unseemly when Meghan Markle's personal glam squad appears repeatedly in the foundation's expense reports. A glaring red flag that raises questions about the true priorities behind Archewell's spending. This is far from a typical nonprofit's budget breakdown, especially considering the foundation's near-total lack of output and public-facing results. Leaked internal documents reviewed by Bloomberg paint a troubling financial picture. According to these records, Archewell has shelled out over $2 million on administrative costs alone. Yet what the public sees in return is practically nothing. This is not the hallmark of a charity fulfilling its mission. Instead, it smacks of inefficiency at best, and at worst, misappropriation. Insiders close to the foundation have begun speaking out, revealing a troubling pattern. Former contractors and vendors recount being left stranded for months, scrambling to get reimbursed for services rendered. One vendor, who spoke anonymously to the Daily Wire, admitted they had to threaten legal action just to secure overdue payments. Another source revealed that payment delays mysteriously coincided with moments of heightened public scrutiny, almost as if the foundation's internal panic was bleeding into their accounting processes, stalling payments in hopes of riding out negative headlines. This isn't idle gossip or baseless speculation. It reflects an emerging pattern of financial mismanagement. The IRS has reportedly been tipped off, though no official investigation has been announced yet. But nonprofit attorneys warn that it's only a matter of time before the situation escalates into a formal inquiry. When funds meant for charitable work are diverted to personal branding efforts, or when consultants who also serve as Meghan's stylists are paid from nonprofit coffers, the issue crosses a serious legal line. In jurisdictions like California, where nonprofit regulations are stringent, such practices aren't just frowned upon, they could trigger criminal charges. Celebrity status offers no immunity in these matters. Meanwhile, Meghan's cultural and media capital has diminished dramatically. Where once she commanded magazine covers with ease, she now finds major publications unwilling to even entertain her story. Page 6 recently reported that People magazine, which previously leaned favorable toward Meghan, quietly shelved a planned profile after facing internal resistance. The concern? Meghan's public image had become too divisive, too risky for editors who feared alienating either readers or advertisers. This shift highlights just how steeply her star has fallen in the eyes of the media establishment. Behind the scenes, the situation looks even worse. Reports suggest Meghan's inner circle is fracturing under pressure. Staff turnover has spiked, morale is reportedly plummeting, and leaks from within her camp have become frequent. Her PR team, once adept at managing public crises, now spends most of its time in relentless damage control mode, scrambling to contain fallout rather than shaping narratives. And this damage extends far beyond finances. Meghan is no longer perceived as the courageous, misunderstood outsider bravely challenging royal traditions. Instead, public perception has shifted to seeing her as someone who manipulated stories, overpromised results, and underdelivered repeatedly. Even her marriage to Prince Harry, once heralded as her strongest protective shield in the public arena, no longer generates goodwill or sympathy. Every joint appearance they make is scrutinized to the point of exhaustion. Body language experts dissect their every interaction, interpreting each glance or gesture as a signal of strain or discord. The public isn't rooting for them as before. They're watching with a mix of skepticism and anticipation, waiting to see if and when their carefully curated image will finally crumble. Netflix, which once committed an eye-popping $100 million deal to Meghan and Harry, has pulled back sharply. Budgets have been slashed, creative control revoked, and insiders whisper that Meghan no longer holds the final word on upcoming projects. An anonymous executive told Deadline, "We expected the crown. What we got instead feels like a daytime blog with royal undertones." The mood inside the streaming giant is clear. This is no longer prestige content. It's crisis management masquerading as storytelling. Financial warning signs continue to multiply. Banks such as Wells Fargo and First Republic have reportedly flagged suspicious transactions in Meghan's business accounts. These include consultants being paid ahead of employees, large sums moving with no clearly documented deliverables, delayed financial filings, and a general atmosphere of rushed and chaotic bookkeeping. On paper, Meghan may still appear wealthy, but in reality, the financial foundation is shaky at best, potentially running on fumes. This is the quiet implosion of a once powerful narrative. There are no scandalous headlines exploding across tabloids. Instead, it's a slow fade marked by absence. No high-profile invitations, no glamorous premieres, no lucrative collaborations. Meghan's name, once a valuable asset commanding attention and respect, has morphed into a cautionary tale whispered in entertainment circles. In Hollywood, titles and connections mean nothing without trust. And that's precisely what Meghan Markle has lost. There is no royal safety net left to catch her fall, no palace to serve as a shield, and no media mogul like Oprah to spin a favorable narrative. Meghan built her brand by boldly breaking away from the crown, but in doing so, she may have shattered the one thing she could never afford to lose: her credibility. And in the cutthroat world of celebrity and influence, once credibility is gone, everything else inevitably follows.